Remember that the subject likes to please the hypnotist usually. That's why you have to be so careful about not, putting words in their mouth. And sometimes a good guy will test them by saying, "What color was the hair?" And the subject says, "There is no hair. That's strange. What was happening in the corner of the room?" Well, gee whiz, there is no corner. So you've got to be open-ended, and you've got to be very careful not to lead them down the path that you want them to take.
Have there been any other abduction reports that you accepted or that you accept now?
Well, the first one certainly that comes to mind is Travis Walton, The Fire in the Sky. Now, the movie was a travesty about what happened, if you'll pardon the pun. But, I've been in Travis's house. He passed polygraph examinations, met his family. He's in my movie UFOs Are Real. And we were up in Arizona, out in the forest. Boy, you got those guys with these 20-inch chainsaws. You can see why the sheriff was thinking, well, maybe this was a chainsaw murder. Travis was gone for 5 days. He well recognized in the community. Small town's hard to get away with being a liar without a lot of people knowing it. There are others, too. As a matter of fact, about a third, depends on who you talk to, 25 to 30% of abduction people remember everything, of abductees remember everything without being hypnotized. Again, even then, you have to be careful how you get the story told. And any cop has the same problem. When a witness has been involved in a complicated, terrifying experience, you really want to be careful how you elicit that data from him. The emotional thing, and, you run into the Patty Hearst syndrome kind of thing. We all react differently to stressful situations. And especially there have been cases, more than one person, like with Betty and Barney, a parent and a child, where the great concern on the part of the parent is what happens to the child. Remember, especially with Betty and Barney, they had no way of knowing that this has happened to other people. Were they going to be brought back? I mean, they're obviously under control of these strange, advanced, frightening beings. That's a terrifying situation. Matter of fact, Dr. Simon said in writing that their emotional intensity as they relived, not retold, relived the experience, was as great as that of any of the military guys that he had worked with, and that covers a lot of ground. He had to stop 2 sessions, one each, because he wasn't sure they could handle it. The terror was so palpable. Blood pressure going up and all kinds of things when people are extremely frightened. And so there are lessons to be learned here. I am certainly not saying that everybody who claims to have been abducted by aliens has been. That's not my view at all. There are liars. There are people who don't always tell the truth, people who make up stories, people who can't remember and fill in the blanks, people who want attention. That's not only in ufology, I think, There are people, I've talked to the police here. I live in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, and I've talked to the RCMP. And not only, two interesting things they said. I said, when you give a lot of publicity to a case and you ask for people to come forward, you get a lot of responses. Oh, yeah, hundreds. What % of those would you say are useful? 2 to 4%, but that's how we solve most crimes. Then he went on to talk about the fact, yes, I asked, do you get confessions from people who obviously couldn't have done the crime? Happens a lot. We don't know why. People who say they were the person, they did it, they shot them, and, where you can easily prove that they couldn't have. Now, what's going on here? I don't know the dynamics. People who want attention, want to be the center of media attention. I don't know.
But the bottom line is that you do accept the fact that abduction occurs, that it has occurred for a long time, even though we have maybe only a certain amount of, quote, evidence. I think it's interesting that you said, was it 25 to 30% of the people who were abducted remember without having to be hypnotized?
That's right.
Okay.
And remember, there is physical evidence in the case of Betty and Barney Hill.
What was it?
Well, Betty's dress was very strange. They have the star map. And I guess maybe you wouldn't call it physical. They came at Betty with a big needle that they put in her navel, and it hurt. And she screamed, and the leader stops the pain right away. Well, it was a pregnancy test. That made no sense in 1961. Later, we know amniocentesis came into the picture. But Barney had a ring of warts in his groin. I call them warts in quotes because some kind of growth, and they had to be surgically removed. Barney's shoes were scuffed. Now, he was a meticulous dresser. How could you be driving a car from Montreal down to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and have your shoes be so badly scuffed they only used them for gardening after that? There were a bunch of circles about the size, let's say, of a silver dollar on the trunk of their car. And for some reason, Betty's sister asked a neighbor who was a physicist any suggestions. He said, why don't you bring a compass close to these circles? And they did, and the compass went crazy and stopped whirling when they took it away, and Kathy saw this. Other people saw it. That's physical evidence. Now, we don't have the card. We haven't done any analysis, and at that time, nobody knew about the on-board part of the story. So there were things. The dress has been tested, and there's some strange stuff on it. This is all told in the book. But you'd be surprised how often there is some kind of evidence. There might be somebody who witnessed that the person was no longer where they should have been and then came back. Where the heck were they? And so there is physical evidence in a number of cases, marks on the body that I'll call them punch marks, scoop marks might be better, are often reported. Maybe a quarter-inch wide and a 16th of an inch deep. And pathologists say that's how you take samples of skin to run tests on it. There have been implants found. Dr. Roger Lear out in the San Fernando Valley has written books about extraction of implants from people. And we all know that some people have a piece of glass and metal in their feet and in their hands, but some of these are really peculiar. They give off certain frequency radio signals. These are tiny little things, BB size kind of stuff, and they don't have the inflammation reaction you normally expect to find if a foreign body is incorporated in your body. So there is physical evidence.
Does it scare you? Does a part of it scare you?
Well, I don't like the idea of being under somebody's control, I guess. But on the other hand, nothing aliens have done to us compares to what we Earthlings have done to other Earthlings.
Or to animals.
Oh, well, yes, or to animals. We just had a case here of somebody killing almost 100 sled dogs because the season was over and they couldn't feed them. 100 dogs. What kind of nonsense is that? So man does crazy things. You hear about the torture. So the aliens don't scare me. And I hope that if they pick me up, I'd say, take me to your leader.
How has your cosmology, your personal cosmology, changed from 50 years ago to today?
I feel very strongly that we are part of a neighborhood that's chock full of civilizations, many of them more advanced than we are. Wouldn't take much for that. And that there are beings who apparently have solved the problems of how to get along with other people. Either you learn to do that or you die because you get destroyed. And so my cosmology looks at a very different picture from this. Here we are, isolated, and maybe 1,000 light years away, there's another civilization, and 1,000 in the other direction. I say they're all over the place. I'd love to get into their libraries to find out, what fraction of planetary civilizations get past the stage of having too much technology and not enough sociology, which is where I think we are. If we spent a lot of that money on feeding ourselves, feeding our kids, at treating the diseases, at working out a better way to handle the problems of the planet, we'd be a lot better off. Now, maybe other people have done that. I don't know. Maybe there's something we can learn.
Is there anything else you'd like to say today?